Right, knight and pawn versus bishop. I'm reading straight from the Dvoretsky book here on bishop versus knight. Kicks off with this sentence. With this configuration of material, there is not, in my opinion, a single fundamental theoretical position that would be worth memorizing. I disagree with that. I'll come back to that in a sec. I think this particular position on the board is the one that is worth memorizing. But it is a sort of a common theme that's hard to disagree with. For example, Jesus de la Villa says, these endings are less interesting because either they can be easily solved or it is difficult to set useful rules to solve them. That's the thing I agree with the most. We can say these endings are richer in tactics, maybe due to the presence of a knight or the inherent knight-bishop imbalance. But I particularly like that sentence. We can say these endings. It's difficult to set useful rules to solve them, and that is just true. So it's not like this is in like rook endings or whatever. This is the Luthena position. This is how you win it, or this is the Philidor position. This is how you draw it. Is one of the things we're going to look at is a bishop trying to stop the pawn, of course, because it's knight and pawn versus bishop, and it's all about whether one of the diagonals that's trying to block the pawn is 4 squares or fewer, because if it's 4 squares, in theory we can use the king to control 2 of those squares and the knight to control the other 2. But beyond that rule, there isn't really you can't say, oh yeah, you just bring your knight to here, you do this, you do that, and it's won. It just doesn't work like that. It's there's just too many different possible variations, and they are very, very hard to try and understand. I'm going to set up a position where I'll go through what it says in the Book of Jesus, and then I think just for a laugh, I'll play it against Stockfish, and you can watch Stockfish wipe the floor with me in a supposedly drawn position, and I'll say more about that later. But this particular position here, I disagree that you shouldn't just memorize it. I think we should memorize how you win this position as black. It's actually good fun, in my view, to try and work out how you win this as black. Pause the video, have a go at it. How would you win this as black? And I'll give you a little hint. If this is the first time you've seen this position and you think you've got it solved in the first 30 seconds, look a bit deeper. Is there something that you've missed at the end of your winning plan? There almost certainly is. You're probably thinking, well, my plan wins, but I'm a bit nervous now because he said that. Because my plan is just, all I need to do is put my knight on g2, bring the king in and win the bishop, and I've won. The end. Alright, let's have a look at that, how that plan works. So the white bishop can't move, obviously, from stopping this this rook's pawn promoting, because then the black knight just hops into g2 and blocks the promotion square. But white just moves their king. Knight g2, white just waits. Alright, here's my winning plan. Uh-oh, just drawn it. Okay, gone in too early with the king. That is now a draw. What are you talking about? I'm about to be a knight and a pawn up. It's like, yes you are. You are about to be a knight and a pawn up. Hypothetical person who insists on having this argument with me. King e2, king takes h1, and now if the penny hasn't dropped already, white to play and draw. Knights do not triangulate. Knights go white, black, white, black, white, black, white, black. If we put our king on either f1 or f2, then the black king can't move, the black pawn can't move. You just need to put your king on the square that guarantees a 50 moves worth of that, basically. And you just want to... You basically, if you're in time travel, my rule for this would be like, I want to get in check. I want him to put me in check. That's it. So king f1, quick. Yeah, he can put me in check. As long as he can put you in check, it means he can't do the other one. Okay. A knight cannot move from a white square and then protect a dark square. King f2. A knight cannot move from a dark square and then protect a light square. So you would offer your opponent a draw, write king f1, f2 50 times on the score sheet. So I don't know if you can get in trouble with the arbiter for that, I don't know. And yeah, it's just a draw. So you cannot rush in too quickly with your king. And at this point, this becomes kind of quite a difficult endgame to win. And this is the bit where I disagree with Dvoretsky, that I think this is the single position that's worth memorising. And I'm just going to play it against Stockfish. I've got it set up to play against Stockfish. What we want to do is, our king's in a fine position. We want to bring our knight to h4. Okay, just follow that. Get your knight to h4. And we could even go via e3 where we're threatening to come into g2, but we're not really threatening to come into g2. But I'm just going to bring my knight to h4. Oh, out the corner. I have to go back to h1 now because I'm threatening knight g2. So yeah, I mean, it's kind of good Stockfish did that, because when I bring my knight to h4, I'm threatening knight g2, so the bishop has to go into the corner at that point. Okay. Then what we want is, we want the white king to wait around, but we don't want them waiting around on d2, we want them waiting around on d1. So I just play a waiting move. Okay. And the white king has to wait around on d1. And the reason that's important is that now this square is a check. So then you bring your knight to f5, and the bishop cannot move, because if the that's annoying. Okay, well, Stockfish has now just made this a ridiculously easy win, so I'm gonna have to go and do some analysis and look at it more. But yeah, the bishop cannot move. Okay, because if the bishop moves, and that's just to put Stockfish's stupid move back. If the bishop moves, knight e3 check, and then knight g2, and that blocks the white bishop, protecting h1. So the bishop can't move, but the king still has to wait around. Okay. And that's important because that's going to break up the odd even thing. Let's just, is there anything to show here? What a ridiculous move. I don't know, why do engines do this? They don't even play the natural human move at that point. I noticed actually that Stockfish has just changed from play against the computer to play against AI. And it's like, well, let's see some AI then, shall we? Let's see this computer play a normal human move rather than king c1. Anyway, so bishop c6, and yeah, there's nothing to say here, is there? We're just going to bring our knight to g2, and this is over. So I'll resign that. Very generous of me, isn't it? And let's go back to the point Stockfish played its stupid move, which was king c1. So the more natural human move is king d2. And again, if you rush in with the king, it's a draw, because white just follows you in, and it's sorted. We'll just wait around till you take the bishop, and we shall put the king on the square f1 or f2, where you can then get in check. As long as you can get in check, it means that the knight can't block the other square. You can always go f1, f2. But we don't do that. When the king comes to d2, yeah, so the point is now is that because our knight's on f5, now we can come in and attack the bishop. Because if the white king steps onto e2, the placing of our knight on f5 is going to fork the king and bishop, and you never have to put your king in the corner. Knight takes the bishop, it hops out again, and obviously you queen. And that means to wait around, white has to play king e1. Okay. But when king e1 gets played, they've just put their king on the wrong colour square. We go knight e3. If the bishop moves, knight g2 is an easy win, so the king has to wait around on e2. Then you play knight g2, and the king can't go to either of these two waiting around squares. So that's the way that you win that particular position. So yeah, I disagree with Dvoretsky that there's not a single theoretical position worth memorising. I think that one was worth memorising. Let's just go back to it again. So yeah, you bring your knight to h4, and then you get the king to wait around on d1, before swinging it to f5, and it's only then when the king comes back to d2, then you can come in with the king. Because if the white king wants to follow you in, it can't follow you in on e2 because this fork picks up the bishop. It has to follow you in, running out of colours, on e1. But then you can play knight e3, and then almost in fact you can pretty much pre-move. I have no idea what my colour system is there, but you can pre-move knight g2, and if the king's gone to e2, which is green, of course, then yeah, it's a win. So that's how you win that. So this one, black to play. Can black draw the game? Pause the video and decide. I mean, ultimately, it's all about whether we don't actually get near it. Black can draw this one sort of reasonably before it, but it's all about if white can set up that position where the black bishop is in the corner, and we've got a pawn here and our king here, with the black king shut out, then we know that white can win that. They'll just bring their knight to a5, force the black king to e8, and then play knight c4 at the right time. So we've got to get our king across, basically. Now, at the moment, the black bishop is doing a great job of stopping this pawn moving, and white has to create a blockade on that. This isn't a particularly interesting position from the point of view of black has to do some calculating. I don't think there's nothing to do here. It's just like, even if you didn't, you could calculate it from here, and I'll say it was good practice to do so, like count out the moves. If this position's resulted from a swap a minute ago, of course you had to now count it out. You know, you had to count it out. Okay, king g5, knight to c7, presumably. King f6, knight b5. Okay, then the pawn's blocked. I can bring my king a bit closer. Bishop's coming to g2. You know, and you sort of count it all out. So like, by the time white's got the pawn here, where's my king? And it's going to be on... This is me just looking at my moves from earlier. It's going to be on d7. It's like, well, that's all right, isn't it? If the king's on d7, we know that's a draw. That's fine. Yes, the king g5. This is just a fairly easy draw, really. Knight c7. White's got to spend some time blocking the a6 square. King e7, a6, king d7, and a7, bishop g2. There's just no way for white to set up the blockade, in time. And we've already seen that even if the king was on b8, then the white king's already gone in too far towards the bishop, and that would still be a draw. So knight d4, bishop a8, and yeah, I mean, our king's way in time, isn't it? Knight a5, we can just move the king around. Draw. So that was a game from 1981, and the draw was agreed there. Right, next. This one, you can pause the video if you like and have a go. Do you think white can win this, is basically the question. This is a game from 1988. I'd say this one's... I mean, you just look at it and you go, well, I think white's won that. The black king's too far away. Looks like a pretty easy win, in fact. And it is. Even if it was black to move, it's still a win for white. So not a massively interesting position, this one. Just to demonstrate. I suppose it just demonstrates how how the knight and the pawn versus the bishop can be pretty dangerous if the king's far away. And we can play king f5 on the first move, so there's absolutely nothing that's going to be stopping this g6 move. And then you've got the two diagonals that stop the g7 square. This one's only got 3 squares on it. Well, we can definitely control 3 squares with a king and a knight. And this one's got loads of squares on it, so that's the diagonal we want the block on. But fortunately for us, we've already got the block in place. So black's now got to waste time desperately trying to get onto this diagonal. And then we've just got to control, whilst not moving our knight whilst not letting the black bishop back onto that diagonal by carelessly moving our knight. We've just got to control these 3 squares with our pieces, and it's fairly straightforward. So the bishop comes back to e3, g6, bishop h6. There you go, the bishop's on that diagonal. But now the white king just sort of makes its way in. Okay. Bishop g7 was necessary there because white was threatening to come in straight away and control those 2 squares, upon which knight g4 would win. So poor black is sort of having to, if you go back to the original position, you know, black desperately wants to get their king over, and they've had to spend their first 3 moves and now 4 moves moving the bishop. But now it's just completely gone. You know, their king's still on a2. I mean, this. You know, how do you finish it off? Or maybe pause the video and work out how you'd finish it off. The game actually went knight h5 resigns, and the plan is basically knight g7, king g8, and the black king is nowhere. I mean, it comes across like white's got about 4 moves to spare here. I think they've only got a couple of moves to spare, or maybe 1 move to spare. Let's just sort of show how black can draw this if their king was just a bit closer. So if I just do a silly move like king e7, king b3, king f7, so I've just let the black king 2 squares closer. Now it is a draw. Okay, that's maybe closer than I thought. Or maybe it's not. Maybe you realised that was the critical square. Knight h5. Obviously the bishop can't move out because the knight comes back to f6. Sorry if I didn't already say that. But this time the king's close enough to come and hit the g-pawn. So there you go. There's the block. King there. King g8. King f6. So the black king had to get to f6. Or g5, I suppose. But it couldn't get to f5 because the knight was covering f5. So yeah, it's a fairly straightforward knight and pawn win the day against the bishop. Right, let's get on to sort of the probably the critical position stroke example. Again, it's, you know, I do agree with Dvoretsky that you can't memorize how to do this. It's just a principle that we've got 2 diagonals stopping the white pawn from crossing c7, and one of them has got just 4 squares on it. There they are. So if we can use the knight and the king to control those 4 squares, then it's done with the black king so far out of the game. So I mean, in a game, it's probably quite unlikely that you'll get this position with the. It has to be this particular combination to be right on the, you know, right on, what's the word I'm looking for? Not cusp, but right on the biting point, the critical biting point of it being trivially drawn to trivially won. To actually know it's right, trivially drawn to trivially won. It's right in the middle. It's right. It's a tough one. This one's also not particularly tough. This just demonstrates very nicely. This is black to move. If it's white to move, obviously it's an immediate win. This just demonstrates that the winning procedure. That black's completely helpless here. So bishop d8, and the plan's going to be this is a very good square to get your knight to. Okay. I would say that is also worth memorising, by the way. The reason that square is so good to get to is it already controls these 2 squares on that diagonal of just 4 squares. The white king can hop. Kings are hopping now as well as knights. The white king can move. I suppose kings can hop if they want to, why not? The white king can move to d7 where it controls these 2 squares. And if the bishop shifts diagonals, which it has got time to do when we step in front of our own pawn, then don't forget the knight was beautifully placed on c4 to come and create a block on that diagonal. So that's the easy win in this position. So bishop d8, we just move our knight to c4. Knight e3, the king's too far away. knight c4. The king desperately tries to get closer. And this is the bit where you can come in and attack the bishop. Okay. King c8. Bishop has to move off the short diagonal because now all 4 squares are controlled on it. The good news for black is that you've just stepped in front of your own pawn, which gives them just enough time to shift to the other diagonal. But king d7, bishop f4, and there's the block. That's why c4 was such a brilliant square for that knight to be on. Already controlled 2 squares on the diagonal, we were chucking the bishop off, and was ready to be the block on the diagonal that we were chucking the bishop off on too. So that one's fairly easy. This one is pretty hard, but not as hard as the one where Stockfish is going to thrash me. You never know, I might actually get somewhere. So this is a study by Averbacca from 1958, and it's white to play. And here's the short diagonal, again with the 4 squares. And an interesting thing here is that with the knight on c6 or b7, the knight can control 2 of the squares. So if you then just move your king to the other one of c6 or b7, let's say it's b7 in this case, that your knight is not on, your king's controlled the other 2 squares. And it's gone. So white's winning plan is that. If white can do that, if the black king was on a1, for example, then that's how white wins. It's just gone. Where there's no stepping in front of the pawn at any point during that, so the black bishop has to stay on this diagonal, and as soon as the white king arrives on b7, it can't. The only way that black could sort anything out, and that's a bit of a hint as to what's coming up, is to land on d6 when you land on b7. And that is why this position is drawn, because black has got time to do that. There's other ideas as well, by the way, which I'll come on to. But let's just go through the white's main winning plan attempt. So king d5, and just to demonstrate that winning plan, king a3. I'm not sure why you'd play king a3, but it is just an outrageous blunder because of king c4, king a4, king c5, and black is in zugzwang. There's just nowhere for the bishop to move, and there's nowhere for the king to move that doesn't allow king b5. And white will realise their winning plan. I have no idea why anyone would play king a3 in that position. It's not the natural move, and luckily for black, the natural move is the drawing move. King c3, king c5, king d3, and then white tries to execute their winning plan, but is thwarted by king d6. There are other winning plans. When I first looked at this position, I came up with this move, which I thought was rather clever. Just keep the king out the game. I'm directly controlling these 2 squares. And I'm indirectly controlling those 2 with the knight b5 fork. Yeah, they cannot be stepped to because I will just win the bishop. So that's clever, isn't it? Not really. Not really that clever. Black just moves their bishop away from the fork and onto a pretty good square anyway, where they're ready to choose a diagonal. But by playing bishop d8, you freed up your king. King d6, king comes in, and I don't know, we could see knight e6, and the bishop just steps away to h4. And there's not really anything particularly clever about that at all. Never mind. That's probably why it's not mentioned in the book. But in the book, this winning plan is also suggested. King e7. So the main winning plan is just to notice that the knight on c6 is already really nicely placed, controlling these 2 squares. So if you can just get your king to b7, you can control the other 2 squares on the short diagonal, and you've won. But the other winning plan is king e7, king c3. It's like, what's the plan here? Well, the plan here is we're going to hop the knight into d8, king c4, and then back to e6. Which forces the black bishop back. Okay, bishop to a5, king d6, and now you're like, oh, what do we do here? because the knight's coming into c7. So that was the plan. We forced the bishop back on this diagonal. Just out of interest, why couldn't... Yes, because the king was guarding d8. And then we play king d6, and we're threatening knight c7. And at this point, black has to play bishop b4 check, and they're getting to the other diagonal again, and it's a draw. But just out of interest, just to sort of show you how close that was, it was absolutely crucial the king was guarding the c5 square. Otherwise, white would do this knight c5 block. Okay, now imagine the king, obviously we can take that, but imagine you couldn't take that because the king was still too far away and wasn't guarding the c5 square. Black would have to now play bishop a5. What's so good about this? You're not threatening knight c7 anymore. Well, what's so good about this is we can now play knight to b7. We're controlling these two squares. That's not going to affect any of my recording because none of that's being done online. Great, so I can just carry on. As soon as the black bishop steps to b6, we go king c6. And that's the controlling all four squares on that diagonal. Thankfully, our king was controlling c5, so after this check, after this block, black would just take it and it's a draw. So that was a study from 1958. Now this next one, this is even harder. This is even harder. I'm going to be demonstrating in a minute just how hard it is. I'll go through what it says in the textbook on this one, and then I'll have a go against Stockfish, and we'll see if I get anywhere near drawing it. I've practiced this against Stockfish. I have drawn it a few times, but mostly it's about 9-1 for every 10. I haven't played it 10 times, but it just keeps beating me because it keeps I'll show you in a sec. It's I recommend get this position, put it into your engine, and just play it as white against the computer, and just see how many take backs you need before you can finally get a draw. Because it's like, oh, he's done that. It's like, hang on, so I need to stop that. My God, I needed to put my bishop there 2 moves ago. Wow, all right, I'll go back and do that. And then you go on and have a couple of moves, and it's like, oh, he's done that. How's he got it? How's he done that? And it's like, oh yeah, to stop that, I needed to put my bishop there 2 moves ago. And it's just incredible how hard it is to draw this position. But you still give it a go. It's still an entertaining task. That would be my challenge. Anyway, let's go through what it says in the textbook on this one. So you've got to play bishop c5 check first of all. That's just a good move, and that's an obvious move, isn't it? Just put your bishop on the long diagonal. And after black plays king e2, there's only one move that draws. Your second best move here as white is checkmating 22 to black. Wow, there is only one drawing move. What you want to do, of course, is bring your king closer. Now, personally, I'm good enough to see that king c7 is an absolutely horrendous blunder because of knight d5 check, and then there's your block. So, all right, I'm not going to play king c7. But my bishop's guarding this, and whilst black's not threatening to put a block on e3, I'll just bring my king closer. I mean, that's your natural move, right? King b7. Black comes in, they're threatening to put the block on e3. Alright, we're now going to play bishop g1. And then black's got this curious knight f2 move. You're like, it's already lost, by the way. White has already lost this. You're like, what? How? I don't understand that, because we're on that diagonal. We can't be shifted off that diagonal. I mean, knight h3, for example, attacks our bishop, but isn't ready to put a block on e3, so we just move back on the diagonal. King f1, sure, that attacks our bishop, But then black's got 2 pieces in front of their pawn, so surely we've got enough time to move our bishop to h2 and then off to anywhere on the board, anywhere on the board where it's then ready to jump to one of these 2 diagonals. King f1 can't be that bad. So we'll bring our king in, king c6. It's lost. It's unbelievable. It's lost. King f1, bishop h2, knight to g4, bishop g3. Think, okay, I'm blocking the f2 pawn advance, and then black just quietly makes their way to that f5 square again. Do you remember one of the positions I had earlier on? We had a white pawn on c6, and it was the knight being on c4 with its just incredible coverage. That was so good. The f5 square is the same thing. It's going to control these 2 squares and be ready to be a block on that square. So when I play this against Stockfish in a minute, that's one of the plans I'm going to have to be on the lookout for, the black knight just getting to f5. I mean, what does white do here? I mean, a king move is going to be followed by knight f5. You can't even put your king on d6 because knight f5 check picks up the bishop. So white just sort of desperately tries to get around to protect the f5 square, but they're just too late, and it's a win. So back in this position, you had to see if you bring your king closer, then you've got nothing against this plan. And that means the only drawing move back here is bishop g1. Knight into d1. This time we can bring our king to c7 because that check thing doesn't do anything. There isn't even a check there anymore, but that doesn't do anything. So king to c7. Knight f2. Now any king move is going to transpose straight away to the same problem. I think, where did I have my king? I think I had it on c6, but let's say king d7. We're trying to protect the f5 square. We're going to see the same thing straight away. We'd see knight g4, bishop back to g3. This time, this time there's a different winning plan. This is the thing; it just drives you mad. Because you think, oh yeah, knight e3. Then I've got king e6. I was just glancing at the engine to see if I was right there. I am right. So knight e3. I'm trying to get to this f5 square, but then we can guard it, and that's actually now a draw. So well done there. But unfortunately, black's got this winning plan now. King g2. I suppose there's a couple of squares we could go on this diagonal. H4 or e1. If h4, king h3, the bishop then has to go to e1. Oh, here we go. How about this? We're checking on d7 and coming in here. This is what I mean. I didn't see that until just going through those moves until... Well, you probably could sort of see at the point I was like, oh, okay, that's what happens. Knight e5 check, knight d3, and those squares are covered. What else? Bishop here. Are we going to see the same problem? I think, isn't it? Isn't it just going to be exactly the same thing? Knight e5 check straight away. Yeah. In fact, that's the only winning move. You can't transpose it. Of course, because it wouldn't be check. Knight e5 check. King to... Engine doesn't even like king e6. Yes, it does. It's there. Knight d3, bishop h4, king h3 is gone. So you cannot play a king move, and you have to play bishop h2. You can see why. You can see why Stockfish is just thrashing the hell out of me, because this is just one line, and in this position you have to play bishop g1. It's the only drawing move. In this position, you have to play bishop h2. It's the only drawing move. I can kind of see that they're the same sort of thing, those two. So okay, we'll get that. But then we'll see king f1. You think, all right, I'll bring my king closer. It loses. White has only one drawing move in this position. Just one. One drawing move. Because any king move, I suppose, is going to, again, transpose to the same sorts of things we were seeing. So king d7, let's say knight g4 straight away. That is going to transpose, isn't it, to what we saw straight away, bishop g3, and then we've got this king g2. Yeah, so in this position, White's got only one drawing move, and it's bishop e5. You've got to get the bishop out of there, ready to choose the diagonal, depending on what black does next. The only thing about this bishop e5 move that I can relate to and sort of just tell myself, and that's probably all it is, just telling myself. It's like, oh yeah, I understand this. Yeah, definitely, I'm not just passive learning, but not really learning. The only thing about it is that when it hops to this long diagonal, that's the maximum distance from the knight. That's a long way away from the knight. That's about the only thing about it that I understand. And I'm sure that is relevant, but you know, why is bishop e5 okay and bishop d6 not? I mean, can we answer that before we just cheat and look at the engine? Knight e4 looks pretty good actually against bishop d6, but I'm wrong. Knight e4 is a draw, but knight d3 is checkmate in 16. It's really hard stuff. As you can see, knight d3, can't you? Of course, yeah, you can't go back to this diagonal because the knight's already controlling these two squares. If bishop g3, we're going to see king g2 and king h3. I understand that. Okay, so the bishop sort of desperately tries to... Actually, what does the bishop desperately try to do? Yeah, maybe we do understand that. Maybe that's why bishop d6. It has to be bishop e5. So bishop e5, knight to g4, and we're back on the long diagonal. King e2, bishop g1. And it's quite amusing in the Book of Jesus. He just sort of says, oh yeah, and now it's just a draw because you're just going around in circles. It's like, well, yeah, but that move I understand and would find. That move straight away. I mean, I understand the importance of getting to g1 when black's ready to do a block. I understand not putting my king on c7. But putting it to g1 straight away, wow, okay. Fine, bring my king closer. I've got to get the bishop out now. I mean, it's really hard stuff. And the thing that's hardest about it is that it's not like once you've seen it, you can understand it and apply it next time. I don't even think I've got to that stage. I'm sort of desperately trying to. The best bit, all I can say is I've said this in other videos as well. I understand it enough to know that I don't understand it, and even that's progress. I know it doesn't sound like progress, but it is, because it's if you're aware of your fallibility in a particular area, I think it's actually helpful. Probably not very helpful for your confidence, but it is helpful, I think. So, I mean, I would be on guard. My God, if I had this in an over-the-board game, I would be using all the time I had on the clock to just try and find the one bishop move that's probably the only move in this position. Always bearing in mind what black's winning plan is going to be, which is to control these four squares on the shortest diagonal with their king and knight, and just trying to look for every single knight hop. And I'll probably mess it up, but you know, at least I had to have a bit of fun, and at least and feel I wasn't just randomly losing. I was losing to the best of my ability, something along those lines. I mean, that's bishop e5 there, the only drawing move. Can we start to convince ourselves, well, yeah, if you think about it, bishop d6 isn't very good, is it? Because knight d3, and then you can't get onto this diagonal. So, yeah, all right, we'll see. Anyway, so I've got this set up, this original position for me to play against Stockfish. So this will be a laugh. I'll have a go at it now, and here it is. It's my turn. Let's see if we can follow. I'm playing bishop c5. King e2, so this is the bit where we have to play bishop g1. When I've been practicing this against Stockfish, by the way, it didn't play king e2 or move 1, it played king g3. So now knight d1, and now we're following the textbook. Well, we can follow a textbook. Is it just going to let me follow a textbook? King f1, See, that's different, isn't it? That's different to the knight f2 that we had a minute ago. So that looks to me like already I mean, I've got to balance the fact I'm making a video and you guys don't want to just sort of sit here watching me think about this, but now we've got to make a decision. It seems to me that keeping the bishop on the long diagonal is the best thing to do, and on d4 it does actually temporarily dominate the knight. Not for long, because once the king's not in front of the pawn, knight c3 is a perfectly playable move. Let's do this. Let's go bishop d4. Okay, well I can handle that. That's a transposition. Go on. Oh, we're back in the textbook. There you go. I've done it so far. So this is the bit where you have to play bishop h2, because any king move loses. King f1. This is the bit where you can play king d6, isn't it? And now bishop king g2. This is just following the textbook. No, that's not textbook. Okay, right. So Stockfish has done something different. By the way, this is what I recommend you all do. Get a position that's like this, that's on the biting point of win draw, and just play it against Stockfish and lose a lot, and then try and work out what you've done wrong, and hopefully you'll get to the so somewhere in the middle of it all, pick up the critical skills that you need to handle these positions. I'll be interested to see what some of the sort of the top players, what goes through their head when they get a position like this. Right, so this knight d3 move, that's already controlling these two squares, isn't it? Oh, hang on, have I already messed this up? Was I meant to play bishop e5? Have I just actually not followed the textbook? I think I have. I think I've just messed this up. What an idiot. I have, haven't I? I've messed this up already. Yeah, that's lost. Alright, let's go back a move. Let's play this bishop. Oh, I've gone back 2 moves. Bishop h2. Was it there I had to play a bishop? It's here, isn't it? It's here I have to play bishop e5. Wow. I couldn't even follow the textbook. I've just read it from a book, and it played the line in the book, barring that one transposition. I couldn't even follow it. And yeah, just keep going like this. What's black planning this time round? Haven't we had this position already? And you have to play bishop h2 now. That's different. That's very different. That's forced. Oh, it's moved. King f1. Right. Now what? Now what? Can I bring my king closer? This knight's a long way away from f5, so that's got to be good for me. Can I bring my king closer? I'm thinking of things like, just show you what's going through my head, which you might not be very impressed with, to be honest, but I'm thinking king g2. This bishop's either going to go to h4 or e1, obviously. If it goes to h4, has black got this sort of block coming in? And if they have, could I go to e1 in the meantime? I'm going to bring my king closer and hope there's nothing wrong with that. There's king g2, right, h4 or e1, which is the one to go to? They both look okay. h4, I'm worried about a knight appearing on g3. that's one path to g3. That's another path to g3. But they're both two moves before knight g3 is threatened. At which point I can play, if the knight was on e2, I could put my bishop on e1. And if the knight was on, where was the other way of doing it? Well, they were both via e2. And then king f1 can be met by bishop to h4, because then the knight g3 block can't be made. So I just want to get my, I think I can just move my bishop to, I'm going to move my bishop to h4. And if the knight threatens to come to, oh, if I just stumbled into, I'm wondering if I've stumbled into the, I think I've lost this now. It's so hard. It's so hard. The reason I think I've lost this is because this knight's coming to d3, attacking those two squares, and the king's coming to h3. The line I'm looking at is now king e5, knight d3 check, king attacks the knight, oh, and also attacks the pawn. So he can't play king h3. Yes. I think I can do this. Oh no, I can't do that because he's got knight g. Oh. He's got knight g6. He's got knight g6. It's, oh my god. Knight g6 picks up the bishop. I think it's lost. I think it's absolutely lost. What have I got? The only other thing I can think to do is to bring the bishop to e1 straight away, and then he goes knight d3. This is unbelievable. It's absolutely unbelievable how hard this is. Yeah, so this is lost. I can't do anything. The only sensible move that doesn't allow knight d3 is I want to be able to attack that pawn straight away, but the only way to achieve that is king e5, but then I'm losing my bishop back here. So does that mean that back here I had to put my bishop on e1, not on h4? Still doing that. Oh, and it still picks up the bishop. It's just so hard. So you get to this position, you realise, wow, this is now lost because bishop h4, he goes knight f4, and I can't bring my king to e5 because a fork on g6 picks up the bishop. Bishop e1 is lost because he plays knight f4, and I can't put my king on e5 because a fork picks up the bishop. And that means that back in this position, I couldn't move my king. And it just goes on like that. So what I'll do is I'll resign this, and we'll just check that analysis. I'm now claiming that you can't move your king in this position, which might mean I've already lost it. And it just shows you how hard this is. Let's resign that, because I think I've done enough to demonstrate. No, this is okay. You can move your king. Okay, yeah, so I was wrong. King d6. Let's do this king g2. What's it saying? It's saying play bishop e1, knight f4. So that's not lost. I was wrong. This is not lost. Okay, just move your bishop back to h4. Okay, so I could have carried on there. I didn't have to bring my king in there. What about in this position? Bishop h4. Yeah, that's now lost to knight f4. Wow. So it was bishop e1, and then, yeah, I didn't spend long enough on that one, did I? Knight f4. I mean, I'm right that I can't bring the king closer, but bishop h4 still draws. So it just shows you as well that means that in this position, bishop h4, knight f4, this position is drawn with black to move, but 1 for black if it's white to move. White's in zugzwang. There's a kind of an L here stopping. You want to leave your king on d6. I suspect it's something to do with that. And that means that back in this position, I had to play bishop e1 so that when knight f4, I can go back to h4. And all of this was following the textbook as well, wasn't it? That was mostly just following the textbook. I've practiced this against Stockfish, and after bishop he's played this move, and I've lost it later on. Sometimes the knight sack happens as well. Anyway, I recommend practice that loads yourselves, and just see how hard it is, and that is, like I say, the critical point of it all. Right, I'm going to move on though to, I think we've got a bit of fun to finish it off. Actually, and this one's not fun. This is still sticking on the same 4 or fewer squares. So this was in the Book of Jesus workbook, and the question was, what's Black's best winning try? This position's drawn, by the way, although good luck at playing Stockfish. What's Black's best try out of Knight G4, Knight D1, or King E2, which is the best move to try? And they're all drawn. If Knight D1, then we can play Bishop G1. Okay. If we play Bishop G3, King E2, and we've actually lost that position because this king's already controlling 2 squares, and the knight's going to go and control the other 2. Okay, so it has to be Bishop G1. King E2, King C4, King to F1, and you just step off on that long diagonal. I mean, when you actually study it in the book, it sort of makes it look so easy, doesn't it? And then, this is the bit where Stockfish would play Knight E3 check against you, and you start worrying, like, what am I doing? Apparently King C3 is still drawn. So that was Knight D1. If King E2, it's similar. You have to go back to G1, and that's going to be a very similar position. So Black's best winning try, although to be honest, if you were playing me, they're all going to be good winning tries, is Knight G4. And at this point, if you play Bishop G3, that is again a blunder because of King E2, and there's just nothing to stop the Black Knight arriving on F5. So you would have to, after Knight G4, play Bishop to G1, and then we'd see similar King E2, King C4, Knight F2, King D5, King F1, Bishop H2. This looks like where you've moved your Bishop to H2 too late in that other position, but it's going to be okay here, I think, because the White King's closer. King G2, Bishop steps away. Yeah, our King was sort of in the way, wasn't it, in the other position? We couldn't go all the way back to C7. Bishop D6 is lost to Knight E4. That's fairly clear, actually. We can see that one. So Bishop C7, Knight D1, Bishop B6, draw. Although I recommend, if you're Black, you carry on trying to find your way in on this one, because it is hard. So yeah, I think we've seen enough on this. The 4 squares on the shorter diagonal, and if the White King's far away. Let's finish off this Knight and Pawn versus Bishop with a couple of quite good fun positions. So back to sort of just tactics. This is White to play. In fact, yeah, White to play. White's first move's pretty obvious, Knight C3. And now I'm going to make it, I pause the video, Black to play here. Looks quite easy, right? 5 squares on the shorter diagonal. So what's the problem? But pause the video, have a think about it. So see if you can just analyse it a bit deeply and work out how Black can draw. I've just realised with those loss of internet connections, I've been gurning for... got a freeze of me gurning for most of this video. So there you go. Does that detract from the quality of the chess? Who knows? So yeah, in this position, Bishop E8 is a losing move. My bishop was attacked, and that was the only square it could go to. So how is that a losing move? And it's the unfortunate position of Black's king. Knight D5, King A7, Knight B4, and the Black king cannot move except back to A8. The Black bishop cannot stay on this diagonal unless it goes to b5 or a4, either of which will be met by the knight c6 block. So the black king has to go to a8, knight c6. How about that? What a beautiful piece of zugzwang. The black king just cannot move, so the bishop has to, and it's got no squares. Really, really elegant, that one. So you're like, okay, so this position's lost then. How about that? Bishop b5. Absolutely beautiful. And white can't do anything. White can't stop the black king getting out. Because this time if knight d5, king a7, if we do the same trick with knight back to b4, then we've got bishop e8. Okay, where knight c6 is no longer a block. And once the king's out, it's of course easy because we've got 5 squares on that diagonal. So that was pretty good fun. And then this one. This is a study from 1974. White to play. This is sort of slightly different, isn't it, from the ones we looked at? Because we've only got 3 squares on the shorter diagonal, but the black king's pretty close, which is important. Very important, in fact. I mean, don't think we need to talk about the obvious why you can't promote. Well, you can promote to a knight, I guess, but obviously that's just a waste of time. When I first looked at this, I spent ages on king e8. I didn't solve this puzzle, by the way, king e8. And I liked king e8 because it took away black's checking possibilities, and it sort of forces black to make a decision at this stage. If that decision was bishop b4, that would be a dreadful decision because you could come in and fork the bishop and the e7 block. So when I say black's got to make a decision, black's got to decide bishop g7. And all you've got to do now is get your knight to f5. Because if your knight's on f5, your king's controlling f8 and your knight's controlling the other two. So that's a win. But the problem is that as soon as you move your knight, the black king comes to g6. So you kind of got to get it there with tempo. Knight e6 looks pretty good. Black can't play king g6 yet. They've got to move their bishop. Bishop h6. And you think, hurrah, we're going to get to f5. And it's like, we're not. We're one move too short. So not that, basically. King e8 doesn't do it. I mean, things like knight d5 straight away, bishop g7, not so good. And you realise that the f5 square, it's just such a good square to be on because it's controlling these 2 squares on this diagonal, but it's also ready to perform the knight e7 block. So it's going to put black in a real mess, and black needs their king on g6 to sort of stop it, basically. And then that makes you think, well, if I could control those 2 squares at the same time with my knight, then black's going to be in a mess. Black's going to be in a right mess. And it's like, oh, how do I do that? Which square on the chessboard controls those 2 at the same time? And obviously e7 does it, but the other square we look to is h4. And so knight g2 is the stunning first move here. The thing that's so beautiful about this is that, you know, we're threatening to come here, controlling those 2 squares. But there's also the possibility of coming back here to f4 with some of the stuff we saw a second ago. Okay, so for example, if bishop b4 check, king e8. Okay, the black king comes closer, but then you do come back to f4 check, because once the black bishop's committed to this diagonal, black's got nothing against this plan. And in fact, going back in this position, we can basically pre-move knight f4 here, other than... no, even if the bishop... Yeah, we can pre-move knight f4 here. You know, I was thinking even if silly stuff like this, you wouldn't want to do that. You'd want to play f8 queen. But even knight f4 there, just to be silly, knight f4 I think is still a win. Yeah, it is still a win. Because it can't be taken, because then f8 equals queen. Now, obviously you would play f8 equals queen there, but... yeah, so king g6, knight f4, and it's done. So black's not going to play king g6. They're not going to play bishop b4 check, sorry. What else could they do in this position? They could come to this diagonal, but then we go with the knight h4 idea. And crucially, the king is being stopped from getting to g6. So bishop h6 would see knight f5, and it's done. So not bishop g7. What if black just waits? Bishop b2. Then you play your king e8. The bishop has to come to this diagonal, and then you go knight f4. We're going to be doing the block thing again. Finally, and this is the most beautiful line, after knight g2, king g6 straight away, just saying to you, well, you know, I'm going to get to g6 before you've had a chance to stop me getting there. You go knight h4 check, king g5, and then check this move out. Knight f5. Absolutely beautiful. If that gets taken, f8 queen arrives with check. So bishop b4 is not allowed on account of queen takes king. So black thinks, fine, I'll check you first, cover the f8 square, and then take the knight. And you've just moved your king away from contact with the f7 pawn. So completely stunning. Knight g2, wonderful first move in that final position. Okay, that's gone over an hour now, so I think that's probably about time. I'm going to have to now seriously consider, do I want to re-record a 1 hour video on account of the fact that I've been frozen picture-wise for quite a lot of it. But I hope everyone enjoyed all of that and is none the wiser on how to draw that position.